Hey everyone, if you use Jdbc in Spring Boot, you're going to love this video. We're learning about NamedParameterJdbcTemplate, which lets you use named parameters for inserts. No more question mark placeholders. This makes your SQL much cleaner and easier to work with. I'll show you how to set it up and use it to make your insert operations easier. Get ready to make your coding life better. Let's get started. As you can see on my screen, in a few of our recent videos we've explored various CRUD operations using JdbcTemplate, like saving, fetching, deleting, and updating records. Today, we're going to re-implement our saveEmployee method using NamedParameterJdbcTemplate. If you haven't caught those previous JdbcTemplate videos, make sure to check them out, because we're going to copy most of that code and only make minimal changes. This approach will show you how NamedParameterJdbcTemplate simplifies your SQL queries by allowing you to use clear, named parameters instead of those confusing question mark placeholders. Alright everyone, let's get started. Alright, let's first create a new class, employee named Jdbc repository. Annotate it with @repository. And also give it a bean name if needed, but default name works too. Use @slf4j annotation for logger. Okay, now this class will implement our employee repository interface. And yes, we'll override all the methods. But wait, we're not going to implement all the methods today. We'll leave them as they are. In this video, we're only focusing on the saveEmployee method, using NamedParameterJdbcTemplate. Next, let's inject NamedParameterJdbcTemplate here. It's basically a wrapper over JdbcTemplate, but instead of using question mark, it lets you use named parameters. Much easier to manage, especially when you have multiple fields. Okay, now let's jump into the saveEmployee. Okay, so we already have the saveEmployee method written in our employee Jdbc repository class, right? So instead of writing everything from scratch, let's just copy that method and paste it here in our new employee named Jdbc repository class. This will give us a solid base to start working with. Earlier, we were using question marks for parameters, which works, but let's be honest, it gets a little confusing when there are too many of them. But now, with NamedParameterJdbcTemplate, we don't have to deal with all those question marks anymore. So check this out, instead of question mark, we'll use named parameters. Now technically, you can name these parameters anything you want, there's no restriction. But I like to keep it clean and simple. I usually go with the actual field names. Why? Because later, when you're reading or debugging your code, it's super easy to understand what each value is doing. Alright, let's map our named parameters one by one. Our first question mark was for employee name, so we'll map that to :employee name. Next comes age, so that becomes :age. Then we have joining date, which will map to :joining date. And finally, department becomes :department. Okay, so we've defined our named parameters in the query. But the question is, how does NamedParameterJdbcTemplate know which named parameter should get which value? For that, Spring provides a very handy class called MapSQLParameterSource. We'll use this class to add each named parameter along with its corresponding value. Kind of like saying, hey Spring, use this value for this name. And then we'll just pass this object to our update method. Simple. Alright, now let's create an object of MapSQLParameterSource. Just follow along with what I'm doing on my screen. Alright. So MapSQLParameterSource gives us a handy method called addValue, which helps us map our named parameters to actual values. We just need to pass two things here. First, the parameter name from our query, and second, its corresponding value from the employee object. Let's add them one by one. First, employee name. then age. Next, joining date. And finally, department. Okay, remember in our Jdbc template version, we used keyholder to grab the auto-generated ID after inserting a record? Remember, we specified which key we wanted to retrieve inside the prepared statement? Well, we need that here too. Otherwise, how will we get the new employee's ID? But here's the difference. This time, we don't need prepared statement. We only need keyholder to store the generated key and an array specifying the column name, employee_ID, that we want back. So let's add keyholder and define which key we want to retrieve. Watch this. Alright. Now, instead of JDBCTemplate, we'll use NamedJdbcTemplate. And guess what? We'll use the same update method. No need to learn something new. But here's the twist. Since NamedJdbcTemplate expects parameters in a different way, we'll remove all the previous arguments. Alright. Let's start passing the required parameters step by step. First, we pass our SQL query. Next, we pass our map_SQL parameter source object, which holds all our named parameters and their values. Now, if you don't need any auto-generated values back, you're done. These two parameters are all you need, and you can move forward. But in our case, we do need the auto-generated employee ID. So, we also pass the keyholder object, which will capture the newly generated ID for us. And finally, we pass a string array specifying which column's value we need back. In our case, it's employee_ID. And that's it. Our SaveEmployee method is complete. We've successfully implemented it using NamedParameterJdbcTemplate. Alright, now we need to call our new repository from employee service. If you look at the screen, earlier we were using employee Jdbc repository. But since we've implemented NamedParameterJdbcTemplate, we'll switch it to employee named Jdbc repository. Done. Now, our service knows it has to use employee named Jdbc repository instead of the old one. But wait. If you're wondering what is that qualifier? Why do we even need it when we have multiple beans? Don't worry. I've already covered this in my Spring Core playlist where I explain dependency injection, bean management, and IOC in detail. So definitely check that out. Alright, let's move ahead. Now, it's time to start the application and see if our changes work smoothly. Alright, now let's switch to Postman. Here, we're going to hit our addEmployee API, which internally calls the SaveEmployee method in our repository. Alright, let's add a new employee, Rahul Patel, age 40, working in the QA department, and joined on April 4, 2024. Hitting the addEmployee API now. And done. Request successful. Look at that. We got employee ID 32. But hey, don't just take my word for it. Let's jump into the database. Run a select query. There it is. Employee ID 32, Rahul Patel, age 40, QA department, joined on April 4, 2024. Perfect. Our data is successfully inserted. Hold on. Are we really going to manually add every single parameter to MapSQL parameter source? What if we have 10 or 20 fields? That's just unnecessary extra work. Instead of manually adding each parameter to MapSQL parameter source, can we make this even simpler?
Yes, we can.
Spring provides bean property SQL parameter source, which automatically maps all the fields from our object to named parameters. No need to add them one by one. How does it work? It automatically picks the field names directly from our class, in this case, the employee class, and matches them with the named parameters in our SQL query.
But here's the catch.
The parameter names in the SQL query must match exactly with the variable names in the class. If there's a mismatch, Spring won't be able to map them correctly.
Sounds cool, right? Let's implement this.
Comment out MapSQL parameter source. Create an object of bean property SQL parameter source. And pass our employee object. Replace MapSQL parameter source object in the update method with our new SQL parameter source object.
And that's it.
Spring will now automatically map the field names to the named parameters. No more manual mappings. Let's restart our application again.
Alright, let's switch to Postman.
This time, we're adding a new employee.
Name, Pankaj Singh. Age, 35. Department, Developer. Everything set? Hit send. And success.
We got employee ID 33, just like that.
Now, let's jump over to the database.
There it is. Employee ID 35, Pankaj Singh, developer, successfully inserted.
Alright, quick recap.
In this video, we learned how to insert data using NamedParameterJdbcTemplate in a clean, readable way, first with MapSQL parameter source, and then the simpler way using bean property SQL parameter source. In the next video, we'll see how to fetch employee details by ID using NamedParameterJdbcTemplate. So if you're finding this helpful, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next part. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.